I wanted to talk about communicating and connecting with seniors when you're teaching them technology, because somebody asked me, oh, how is teaching seniors any different? And I said, well, you have to communicate and connect with them. You have to talk from their perspective. And so that wasn't a very good answer at the time. And that's when I had just started, and it's been almost a year now. So I'm going to share a little bit with you about what I've learned working with the Technology Partners program, and share some stories. Some of them are going to be funny. Some of them you'll be familiar with because you've probably experienced them. If you serve seniors, or if you are a senior, you've experienced it. Some of them aren't so great, but we're here to try and make people's lives better. So hopefully in the end, it'll be a happy story. So basically, communicating and connecting with seniors, the tricky thing about it is that language is the English language. There are so many words that mean the same thing, and they're words, but they're different words for the same thing, and then there's a word that kind of means multiple different things depending on the context that you use it in. So, for example, if you're trying to explain to somebody what a window is who's never used computers before, their first thought is a window. That's not what you're talking about. Are you talking about the Windows 11? They might have heard that. Or Windows 10. What's the difference between Windows 10 and Windows 11? Or are you talking about a monitor? That's kind of like a window, right? So you have to think about when you're telling somebody, especially if you're only talking to them over the phone, do they understand what you're talking about? When you say Windows, you also could be talking about the window in a software program, or a browser, or your tabs. So then you're talking about a window and a tab, and you're using the words interchangeably, and they don't realize you're talking about the same thing. So those are very tricky. Then you can talk about you want to upload things to the cloud. Well, what is cloud computing? Do they really need to know what cloud computing is? But you use the same word interchangeably with the internet. Internet's kind of the same thing if you explain it to them. So you're uploading it to the internet, you're uploading it to the cloud. But then you're also, well, what is Wi-Fi? So there's 3 different words that kind of mean the same thing, and we use them interchangeably, but they really don't mean the same thing, and it can make a difference. Because most of the time when I work with seniors, they know that they need Wi-Fi on their device, and they don't know how to get it. They know that sometimes their device works when they get on the bus. Now, you may know that Metropolitan Transit now has Wi-Fi on their bus, but they don't realize that's why it's working. Well, I don't understand. Why is my phone working when I'm on the bus, but it's not working when I go up to my apartment? Well, it's because you don't have Wi-Fi at home, and you have to get internet at home in order to get Wi-Fi. So there's so many meanings that someone has to understand, and you have to sit down and explain it to them from the very beginning if they're not familiar with all these things. So most of us, maybe not in this room, but many people, they assume you've grown up with technology at this point. Now, when I grew up, we had one of the very first Apple computers. So I grew up with computers when I was a young person, and so I got very comfortable with it. So at my age, in my 50s, I'm still pretty comfortable with it. But some people didn't. Now, the other challenge is that they didn't grow up with it. Do they even speak English? Is it their second language or third language? Can they hear? We've had a woman who got one of our free devices, and she's deaf. Fortunately, she had friends who could help her learn how to use her computer. But we didn't have anybody at our tech session that knew how to use sign language to be able to speak to her. So that's another challenge. Can they read? We've had clients who admit that they do not know how to read. There are ways to use the computer, but that's a big challenge as well. We have to meet people where they are, and we have to ask questions and find out what's going on with them, and that's really important. What is their level of experience? Have they had a computer most of their lives, or is this the very first computer they've ever seen? What kind of work did they do maybe when they were younger? Did they work in an office, or did they perhaps work in another type of field, a service field where they didn't have any interaction with computers at all? If they did work with computers, how long ago did they retire? because that's really important too, because if they retired, say, 20 years ago, this is what Windows 3.0 looked like in the 1990s. Perhaps you remember what Windows looks like very recently, but it looks much different. These are what phones looked like in the 1990s. The very first camera phone was released in the 1990s. They didn't have smartphones back then. And of course, this is kind of what computers looked like back in the 1990s. So if that's their most, if they didn't keep up with technology since they've retired, that's what their experience is. So you have to bring them to 2023, and it's much more intimidating if they don't know what they're looking at. So now, contrary to that, there are times where you're going to find people who have a lot of experience and have kept up with the technology. I met a gentleman at Micro Center the other week, and he was there to buy the most recent NVIDIA graphics card, 470 Ti. Well, that kind of blows my mind, because first of all, those graphics cards, if you know anything about graphics cards, are probably more expensive than my computer put together. And he does research. So he's retired, but he still does research. So there are seniors out there who are very savvy in technology, and you can't make that assumption, but probably they wouldn't come to me for help. But you just never know what people do know. You also have to understand the challenges when people get, obviously when they're aging, things like arthritis, or they may just have disabilities. We've had other people that just had disabilities all their life. And so there's accessible technology, and if you go to the gentleman in the other room, he has a whole display of some technology that's made specifically to assist with various handicaps. And one of them, I'm sure he can talk about, is there's different kinds of mice that you can use that are helpful for people who have arthritis, so that you don't have to grip so hard on that small thing. There's features to magnify your screen, and so that you can see if you have poor vision. But the other challenge I find quite a bit is that people don't know how to type. And that is, we used to have typing classes maybe 20, 30 years ago, but they stopped teaching typing in school. And then if you didn't keep up with it, let's say maybe you did learn it in school, but you didn't keep up with it through work, then you don't know how to type. And that is a huge challenge for people, because not only are they trying to learn what to do and where to go and where to find what they need on the screen, whether it's, in most cases, a laptop or a desktop, but then they also have to find the letters. And I just thought this quote from the MIT Technology Review was helpful, because it was making the point that touch typing is an example of cognitive automaticity, the ability to do things without conscious attention or awareness. And it takes the burden off our working memory, allowing us more space for higher order thinking. So in other words, if you know how to type, then you don't have to, you don't have to think about your typing if you already know how to type. And so you have more brain power that you're using to try and figure out things. So that definitely can hamper someone if that's another challenge that they are meeting when they are trying to learn how to use technology. You also have to meet people where they are physically. The challenge with some people is they may not have transportation. They may not be driving any longer, and they may not have a way to get there. And there is Metro Transit, and while I really appreciate the gentlemen who are here from Metro Transit, sometimes there's bus delays. It's a challenge if you want to walk to the bus stop. You go to the bus stop, and the bus, I had one client who said that he had to get somewhere, he walked to the bus stop in the pouring rain, and then he found out that that bus was canceled. And then, so he walked to another bus stop, and he took that bus, but there was construction on the road, and so therefore the bus had to go a few blocks out of the way and then turn to where he was going. So then he had to walk even further in the rain to this destination where he needed to get to. And that's a deterrent, if nothing else, if you wanted to take a class somewhere, or if you needed to go somewhere. So there are a lot of challenges, and if you can meet people where they are, I think that is a huge help. I also will share that I heard a story where there were at least 2 people where there's a Hennepin County library right across from their building, but 2 people had broken limbs trying to walk in the wintertime, trying to cross the street to get to the library. So the fact that we're going to be teaching technology classes and doing help clinics in the building this year, I think would be a huge relief for people if they were concerned about trying to cross the street in the horrible Minnesota winter that we have. So that's one way. And that's the nice thing about our program, that if you sign up for it, you can have a technician come directly to you. Or we are at the senior centers and various public housing buildings. So learn to meet people where they are, learn what's their level of experience physically, and then identify the reason. Is it because they want to see pictures of their grandkids on Facebook, or they want to receive pictures and they want to send pictures to their family? Is it because they want to sell their artwork online? You have to give them a carrot. You have to give them a reason to get through all the other frustrations that are probably going to come from trying to learn how to create an email or how to access their email and upload. There's going to be some frustration. So if you can give them that carrot, you focus on what is their reason for wanting to learn technology. Many of our clients say, well, I just feel like I need to learn it. It's out there. So, we start from the very beginning. Do you know how to turn it on? Do you know where to plug it in? Do you know how to log in? Do you know how to, where do you keep your passwords? You start at the very beginning, but you really have to keep that focused. It has to be goal-oriented. Otherwise, it becomes very overwhelming. And when a person says, well, I just need to learn everything, then you can't spend all day with them. I always recommend that you don't spend more than an hour or two with someone to try and teach them something, because then they need to just, reflect on it, and they can't, they kind of get overwhelmed. So you can only take in so much information. Do they want to search for genealogy? That's another thing that people were interested in doing. Or do they maybe want to track their bus line in real time? And that brings me to the story of one of our clients, one of the very first clients that I worked with. His name is Don, and he didn't want a smartphone. He had a computer, but he did not want a smartphone. And eventually, he realized through conversations with some of our other staff that if he had a smartphone, he could track the Metro Transit on their app. And that was huge for him, because that's the only mode of transportation that he can use. So he said he would try it. And we happened to have an extra, I think, Apple phone that was donated to us or something. So we brought it to him and we set it up. And we set up the Metro Transit app, and now he's using a smartphone. In fact, I showed him the texting app, and we didn't have time to go over it, all of it. And literally the next day I got a text from him without me actually showing it. So he learned very quickly on how to do things on the phone. And 3 months prior, he was swearing up and down he never wanted a smartphone. He had been using a flip phone. But what I like to tell people is technology was actually created to make our life better. I teach a class in which I talk about what the origin of the internet was. And actually, I don't remember his name offhand, but the man who was in charge of the ARCA program, there's a quote from him that says he believes that technology is really to make this world a better place. And he was coming sort of from an academic perspective, even though it was part of the Department of Defense. So I truly believe that technology is here to make our lives better. And I know a lot of times it makes it more complicated and it makes things go a lot faster, but it is there to make our lives, quality of life better. It can relieve isolation, as we found in the pandemic. It can solve problems like not having to walk in the rain to the bus that's canceled. And it can keep you in touch with family that's far away. And you can get access to medical records even when you don't have access to them normally. And then now they've offered MyChart. So now we actually have access to our medical records, and we can send messages to the nursing staff and to our doctors. And that, I think, is a huge advancement in the medical field as well. So I mentioned the story of Dawn. There's also a story of Helen that Gary said that he would be willing to share.
Okay.
There's a microphone here if you would like to.
No worries. All right, yep. So Helen, and I can't use her last name, right? So Helen, before, and I get into the story, I just want to confirm and agree with everything that Cynthia said. From a user perspective, I had an 84-year-old gentleman look me in the eye about 4 or 5 months ago, and he's like, I've made it this far in my life without technology. Why do I need you? Why should I listen to you? And I'm like, I kind of step back a little bit, and I thought, I'm like, there are certain things in life that you're not going to be able to do without technology. However, if you don't want to do that and you're happy, but then you don't need it. You're right. You're perfectly right. However, you might not be able to make a plane reservation if you go to the bank and use an ATM. I mean, technology is everywhere in our life. The other thing is, I'm thinking through it, and Cynthia, we've kind of broken technology down to 3 basic components. So there's access, devices, and usage is how we kind of look at it. And to Cynthia's point, when there's a specific piece on usage, it's like you have to have a newer computer, a new phone, maybe a smart TV. It was funny. Diana, you were in here earlier, right? Now maybe she's broken out. But she was meeting with me over in the technology room, and she wanted to get on Instagram. And she's like, I know how to go to the Apple App Store, download Instagram to my phone, my Apple iPhone. Just show me how to use Instagram. And I was like, wow, I've got 22 and 20-year-old kids. They're all over Instagram, but most 63-year-olds aren't, right? But it gets back to usage and what is it that you want to do with it. So Helen Wolfel, so Helen's 91. And Helen, we have this photograph of her, and Helen was going to be here, but she couldn't because she has something in her nose. She couldn't from health reasons, right? So she couldn't be here today. But she has... Our lives are driven by user IDs and passwords today. And Helen she's just trying to do some virtual doctor's appointments through United Health, and I need to be careful because Bart Reed was here. We had a whole bunch of people here earlier this morning. But we took a photograph of it. She's got like 8 pieces of paper that were taped together, so it's extremely wide. And she's like, I'm really not exactly sure what my user ID is, but this is what I want to be able to do. And that's where it was one of those, we've got our password safe document where it's like, okay, what's my user ID? What is it that I'm trying to do? And what's the password to get into this thing? Our lives are so driven by user IDs and passwords. And Helen, it was funny because she also said, I don't want to bother my kids anymore. Right? So she's like, I don't want to continue to call my kids and have them help on different things. So I need this, this, and this. And so we helped her work through those particular things. So the main takeaway is the user IDs and the passwords. Be organized with that.
That is definitely one of, you can give that to Abdi. Oh, yeah. That is oftentimes what we get called with clients who have forgotten their passwords. And they don't know the difference between a password and a PIN as well. So, and there are differences. You might also experience when you've had to go to a website, you type in your password and then it doesn't work, and then you type it in again, and it doesn't. Some websites do have this, but there are a few out there that have no little eyeball that you can click on to see what you've typed. And so, that's another way that, the UI, the user interface that's out there, I don't think they take into consideration all the time all the users that are going to have trouble, because it's really critical to have some way to see what you've typed in there. Now, Rick, who is one of our STAR field staff, suggested that you keep that on a notepad, and actually my dad gave me this idea as well, to have either a flash drive with a notepad document and all your passwords, and then you just copy your password and put it on the screen. Now, but some websites will not take a pasted text, so it can be a challenge. But anyway, that was just kind of another little tidbit I wanted to share that Rick was saying, or you can just have it on a notepad, and you can have the notepad document password protected. So you just remember the password for the notepad, and then you have a list of all your passwords and usernames. But that's a really critical thing, is if you can leave here with anything, is to make sure that you have all your passwords and usernames written down somewhere for you, because that's so common for people to call and say, I don't remember my password, I can't get into my computer. And then sometimes, we don't have, we can't get there right away, so then they're out their laptop for a week, until we can get somebody to them. Now I also have Abdi here who's going to share his experience with working with his client, and I apologize, his client was not able to get here either because of just a logistics of she has grandchildren that she watches after, I believe. So.
Okay. Oh yeah. Hi, my name is Abdi, and coming into this role a couple of months ago, I was like, as a young person, I am trying to figure out a routine I can stick to and learn as little as possible, get away with as little as possible. And I was like, imagine like people who are older than me, right? They also figure out what works for them and then they stick with it. But actually I found out that my clients, for example, Asha, very curious, driven, always comes with questions, super curious. For a whole 2 hours, we spent going from one thing she wanted to do, and then as soon as we figured that out, on to the next. I was like, I need a break, I feel like she should have been the one who needed the break, but I had to take some time off. And especially, I work with people whose first language is Somali and have very little exposure to technology, and also with the language barrier added to that. And I found that at the beginning, I was brainstorming with Cynthia and Gary, and we were thinking maybe I should just translate everything in Somali, and then we go through that. But then I realized that as soon as they leave my classroom, every device is going to be in English. So that wouldn't really be sustainable. So I figured I will go through it, everything in English, but I will speak Somali. And then they will also get the added benefit of pronouncing that and learning how to speak English this way also. And I've been really impressed with like how much progress they have made. And I try to bring a little bit of, what they know, contextualizing, using analogies. If I'm explaining a very abstract concept like what a wallpaper is, I have to come up with something they know that they can understand, like, for example, the window curtains. And the curtains in general is sort of like a wallpaper, so I was able to connect those two and then get the point across. But yeah, and that will be my experience, and thanks for your time.
Does anybody have any questions at this point about our experiences in teaching technology, or anything that we can elaborate on? I just want to introduce Michelle Wolney is here. She is from East Side Neighborhood Services, and they actually offer some technology classes. A lot of the people that got the donated laptops are taking classes with her. She's actually the one who teaches the classes. And Michelle and I taught a class together, my very first class I taught with her. And so I learned a little bit from her as well, but not enough on how to use a PowerPoint projector, apparently. Is any other? Okay. All right, well, thank you so much for coming. We do have some field technicians if you want to sign up for help with a smartphone, or if you want to understand how something works. Or if you are 60 and over and you want to sign up for the home program, you're certainly welcome to do that. We should have forms at the front desk, as well as I have a few forms back in the technology room. And we provide support either over the phone or in person, or you can come to this several senior centers Gary, can you spell out the senior centers that we serve?
We're at Edina, Minnetonka, Brooklyn Park, Eden Prairie,
Gillespie now.
Gillespie out in Mound, Gillespie Center.
Crow River and...
Yeah, I don't know all the right. St. Michael, Monticello, Crow River.
Any in Scott or Carver County?
And Chanhassen.
And yeah, so we just started serving. We just started serving Scott and Carver County. So, and if you know any, we do technology help sessions. So they're usually one-on-one sessions that people can sign up for, and get help. If we expand the classes, then that'll be something slightly different. The classes we started doing are kind of like a trial run or what have you, but we would like to duplicate them. Basically what I am offering, so Eastside offers classes, and a lot of the curriculum, Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, are based off of Senior Planet, right? Senior Planet is a national organization that has created curriculum specifically for teaching seniors technology. The classes that I'm doing are actually much more basic than what Senior Planet has already presented. So I'm literally doing, how to attach photos to a text message, or how to attach photos to a document. And so it's not stuff that was already provided by Senior Planet, I don't think. So we're trying not to duplicate what's already out there. But if that's something that people are looking for, there are classes online that I can refer you to, and then we also are just like keeping a list of what people are interested if we were to offer it. So, but that takes some time to get in the planning and grants and things. So, thank you again for coming. I'm really happy to share this program with you all. I hope that you tell people about it, because I think it's so important. Especially, we don't know if there's another season of pandemic coming through. We need to be able to be online and to communicate with our loved ones, no matter what the scenario is out there. So let's try to get everybody online and on the information highway and digitally literate. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.